características que queria passar para vocês. A primeira, que essa sessão está sendo gravada. E ela vai ser disponibilizada no nosso canal do YouTube assim que acabar o ciclo de capacitação. Não logo a seguir, a gente precisa dormir, descansar um bocadinho, mas em breve ele estará no nosso canal do YouTube, do Mob 4.0. Temos o professor Horácio, ele, como eu disse, é um convidado internacional, ele fala do Chile, acho eu que ele está no Chile, mas ele é professor da Universidade Austral do Chile e ele preferiu fazer a apresentação em inglês hoje, a gente pediu, na verdade, para ele fazer a apresentação em inglês hoje, e vai ter tradução simultânea em uma sala separada para quem quiser acompanhar a tradução para português. Para acessar essa sala, a Gabriela acabou de mandar o link pelo chat. Então, basta acessar essa sessão do Zoom. A nossa indicação é que você acesse pelo seu telefone, feche o microfone e feche o áudio do lado de cá para não haver interferência, mas fica acompanhando a tradução lá e fica assistindo aqui a apresentação do professor Horácio. Antes de... queria confirmar com a produção, se tem mais algum aviso que eu preciso dar? Não? Está tudo certo?
Tem só um detalhe, se o pessoal quiser acompanhar só pelo Google Meet, a gente vai estar compartilhando tela por lá também.
Obrigado, Gabi. Então, partindo agora para as apresentações, deixa eu pegar aqui minha colinha. Então, o professor Horácio, ele tem licenciatura em Biologia pela Universidade Católica do Chile, doutorado em Ecologia pela Universidade do Novo México, nos Estados Unidos, pós-doc no Departamento de Informática da UNM, é professor da Faculdade de Florestas e Recursos Naturais da Universidade Austral do Chile, em Valdívia. Nas palavras do próprio Horácio, o interesse dele é descrever e explicar as dinâmicas de sistemas complexos em ecologia e sistemas urbanos. Sobre esse último tema, o interesse dele é compreender a relação entre a diversidade e sustentabilidade para contribuir para o desenvolvimento de políticas urbanas que considerem a complexidade dos sistemas socioambientais. O foco dele é principalmente baseado no uso de Big Data e da Ecoinformática como ferramentas multidisciplinares de análise. Hoje, a apresentação na Masterclass do Mob 4.0 é intitulada Um Novo Olhar sobre Padrões Antigos. A pergunta: podemos revelar padrões de segregação usando os dados de telefone móveis? Horácio, thank you again to be with us today. The microphone and the time is all yours, and I will share your presentation now.
Well, I should start to thank you all. I really appreciate to have a venue in these post-pandemic times where we've been sort of submerged through the telematic or just through these internet connections, and while it feels sort of like that we're just starting to emerge and be able to connect to each other, we also realize that it's become so comfortable to just sit here in my house and give talks. And I imagine same things for you, that you're scattered across the country. So I really appreciate to still have these opportunities for to interact. So thank you very much. Special thanks to Alexander Evsukovs, whom we've been working, and we've been trying to find a venue to get together and continue a collaboration that we started a couple of years ago. So you've asked me last week to give this talk, and I immediately got very enthusiastic about preparing a talk with this topic, this I wouldn't say new topic, but it's an incipient topic that we're trying to explore in a recent project. And then I realized that we're actually just starting this project, and we've had a very some harsh time to get across with our partners in the more private sector, which whom we're trying to gather the data. So what I will do in this presentation is sort of go through the general ideas of the project and the mostly the overview of what we've been thinking and working through these years in the Ecoinformática lab, which I try to put together. So the title is essentially a way to attempt to propose the idea that there, in this big data deluge, I would say, this large amount of data that are sort of falling upon us from the different sources of information and different types of technology that we're working through. How can we actually use this information to make something more than simple advertisements? And one general feature that we've been trying to point towards is can we use this information to get a better descriptions of how social interaction occur and how segregation and perhaps even polarization could happen. So if you could go to the next one. I understand. Yeah. Okay. So the main object of study in this research is the city. The city, and it's been an object of a very particular object for human nature that has been described for a long time as a social construct that has facilitated life and the emerging of society, right? And Child describes this in an old paper from 1950 as a place with very particular, very specific features. One is that it concentrates. It's a place where people concentrate, and the density of population is above a normal standard, right? That generates some sort of differentiation across the population, where all residents of a city starts to grow their own food and commence to specialize in their particular ways of embracing and making a life. Usually the cities are governed by some sort of deity or some sort of king or some sort of government to whom the citizens, or the urbanites that we're going to start calling them, have to pay taxes towards. But this comes with some good perks, because the institutionalization of these societies starts to build some sort of infrastructure, right? And those who do not produce their own food are usually maintained by the society as a whole. So they also develop a variety of other features, like they develop a writing system, they develop symbolic arts, and they start to trade. They start to exchange goods and material, imports, and specialist craftsmen from outside the family group commence to generate a very specialized and different niche that are beginning to differentiate some different people from each other. So in an essence, this is what we know, the ultimate definition of what a complex system is. So it is these systems that actually require more than one language to be described. There's many ways to describe these cities, right? This is the first, this is a description, but maybe a sociologist will tell it from a totally different perspective. Maybe a medical practitioner will tell you from a very different angle what a city represents to these these groups of people, or to these lines of thought. So it requires more than one language to be described. And it's also a system where the agents, the urbanites, the people that live in these cities often act locally, and they act locally without a central control. And in spite of that, they produce some sort of emergent properties that generates a very specific idiosyncratic that is particular to that city specifically. And also, these agents are very hard to follow and to predict. The behavior of these agents are very hard to follow and to predict, which makes them totally untractable. So this definition of a city as a complex systems poses and several challenges. And because these cities are sources of major problems and solutions, the major realm in which we've been developing our lines of research is among three bigger questions. The first thing is how to make these cities sustainable across time. What happens actually when these cities get bigger and bigger, and we go from little village to medium-sized cities to metropolis and megapolis, like might be Santiago or Rio de Janeiro, or the many large urban systems that we find across the world. And finally, how can we develop an integrated vision of how of the functional dynamics that operates across the city? Can I see the next one, please? So one big difference that has arisen lately is that the amount of data that's been collected across time in our society has, since 2002, based on this paper from Martin Hilbert in Science, it's been since 2002 that we have more information that's been digitally stored as compared to analogically stored. So this is to say, there is actually an amount of information available in digital forms that way bigger and that continues to grow, that makes information really easy to grasp, really easy to gather. And the big problem is, how do we go, actually, sorry for my misspoken, is that how do we go from data to information? How can we make sense of this data? Next one. And the big challenge will be then to generate models or generate descriptions of this data that will generate some applied knowledge, right? As the data revolution idea has been proposed by Rob Kitchen. Next one, please. So what I'm proposing here is not something really new, but it's very similar to what Galileo Galilei did when he actually gathered this microscope that the Dutch opticians were developing in the 16th and the 17th century, where they actually, instead of looking at a small objects at the hand's reach, he took this microscope and turned it around and looked at the sky and created, actually founded the field of cosmology. So what we're actually proposing is that, can we actually gather these data and look at them and turn this data towards our own society and turn it into what we think of as a social scope, right? Next one. So what this research program is proposing is actually providing a data analysis in essentially 4 big areas. One is to generate an updated map of socioeconomic conditions across the main cities in Chile. B is analyze the movement statistics of city dwellers, like directional angles, step lengths, distribution between cities at the individual neighbor and larger patterns, generate high resolution descriptions of social interactions in the main cities of Chile, and finally generate like high resolution descriptions of social spatial segregation that will consider mobility and social interaction at the individual and community level. That is the plan of this new research program that we started to develop since last year. Next one, please. So the justification is that there is a lot of information. This is a colleague here in Chile that's been going a little bit crazy in a very good sense, and been trying to map all the different features that we can find and different descriptions of a city. Next one. Please. So the data set that we've been working with is a big data set of CDR, very similar to what the group of Alexander Evsukovs have been working for Rio de Janeiro and Brazil in general. It is a data set of all phone calls across Chile, and it's been for how do you say that, for privacy reasons. I was trying to find a word. For privacy reasons, it's been given to we've been given 4 weeks from March 2015 to November 2015, and these weeks are scattered across the year. And the idea of this data is actually to provide a business as usual view of what a city of what the phone interactions actually are. So these are composed of phone calls, voice calls, which were still very much made through the normal cellular lines in 2015, and also data information. So every time that a cell phone will connect to an antenna, it will download a data package. So that's what we call an XDR. Next one, please. And the general approach to look at this data and turn it into information and descriptions of how society works is very much what Scandinavian researchers and geographers proposed during the 70s. And in particular, Torgen Harkenstram proposed in 1970s a methodological framework to explicitly integrate the social interaction potential of places. So if we go from panel A to B to C, if we go from panel C to B to A, what this time geography framework proposes is that we're able to look to generate and understand a social interaction potential of spaces, of places, through the aggregate study of what they called the space-time prism. And the space-time prism is actually all those places that an individual go through across a day or a particular journey. And so when you create this prism and you put all these users together, you're able to that's what the time geography framework proposes. You should be able to understand what the potentials of these places are. Now, what is interesting is that in 1970s, there was no actual means to produce this type of information, which we now actually have, and that's somehow the power of this approach. Next. So most of this work is done in Chile. So for those of you who don't know, Chile is a country in South America. It's a very long country that spans for almost 4,500 kilometers from above the level of, I would say, a little north of Rio de Janeiro, right? Latitude, 17 degrees latitude up to 55 degrees latitude in the south. So very close to those Antarctica. Next one. So the data And here I'm gonna ask you, Mateus, to click not fast, but sequentially. So we have the city, which we have divided by these different Voronoi cells, which represents the area, the influence area of each antenna, cellular antenna. Next one. So these antennas are represented by these yellow dots across the city. Next one. And one phone call or one data is an individual that will move from the lower left, let's say, from the lower left polygon to the downtown or Providencia area, which is the upper right, and it will produce this trajectory. And next one, which will mix with the trajectory of another individual, maybe that goes to a totally different size. Next one, which will generate an integrated view of how this city is used across the day, right? So this is a small example of only 1,000 users, a subset of the data. Santiago is a city of almost 5.5 million people, and where the dots, it's an animated picture where the dots are the number of people that are connected to that antenna, and the lines are the trajectories that we're able to extract from each of these data sets. So we have this for all the cities across the country. Same thing for Concepcion, which is the second or third largest city in Chile, and all the smaller towns as well. Next one. So using this data set and this framework, we were able in the past to generate a number of very interesting research tackling on these data, on these ideas that I proposed to you earlier. The first one was actually a very general aspatial description of how social interaction would happen across cities. So in a book published by Springer and Denis Pumat in France, we sort of described the topology of the communication across cities and across these cities of different size. So the premise here is actually that small cities will transform into medium-sized cities, and medium-sized to larger cities, and to metropolis. And what we were trying to look at is trying to understand how social interactions will change and will scale across the size of cities. So what we found, so we characterized here on the left panel, we characterized each city by the social interaction. We built a social network for all the people that were actually talking on the phone to each other. And what we found is that, yes, I mean, these are small world type of networks, but very interesting. We are able to describe the topology, we are able to describe assortativity, and but we also are able to find that there is some sort of inflection point at around 10,000 people where the city shows a totally different behavior. And this is very interesting because it points towards saying that that the city as an organization unit actually may be characterized starting at that size. So using scaling approximations, we were able to describe, and using this data, we're able to describe a particular feature of what cities are, at least in Chile. On another hand, we published with students, Boris Sotomayor. We had a very different question. We had a question as to how do these cities actually how are we able to actually define the boundaries, the functional boundaries of a city? we know there is a huge problem of defining where the city limits actually is in terms of all the economic information and social information and urban policymakers that try to develop policy to build cities. But the big problem is in general, how do we define what a city is and where the urban and versus rural area starts? And using this idea of scaling, we actually developed, looked at the data and analyzed the centrality of places. And we used urban scaling approach, an approximation, to look at those places that were scaling in a very different fashion, and we're able to describe a methodology to set the limits of the urban boundary, depending on different times of the days and different approximations, so that we actually could have different representations of cities given the time in which we looked at. So that was also an approximation using this data. On an other hand, in a research also done with students, we also were interested in trying to understand this idea of how social mixing would happen during times in which social mixing is usually not thought of. In general, we think of segregation, social mixing, as residential segregation. That's what most of sociological literature has been about, and we're just starting to look at cities in a more dynamical way, and we were looking at how segregation would happen during working hours. And so on the left, and so on your right panel, you have two representations of Santiago. One is a simple map of socioeconomic levels for Santiago, and to the right, we have a community. We using the network of interactions of the trajectories, of the spatial interaction of trajectories. We use the community detection algorithm to divide the city in different areas. And what we see, which is very interesting, we see a very we actually are able to devise the dynamic nature of the city of Santiago, where it actually most of the people go downtown to do their job. And actually the only place that's not segregated in Santiago is the downtown area, the blue areas that you can see. So using this type of information, we're able to again look at this, have a different representation of how the city is. And actually it didn't mean to propose a totally we didn't see anything that was very dramatically new in terms of how the city was organized. But what we were able to do was to use this type of information to corroborate a pattern, a spatial pattern that was oldly described by sociologists since an urbanist by studying the city of Santiago. So that was another nice approximation. Next one. So the big challenges and lines of development is to search across spatial and socioeconomic scope, is to find better ways to stratify the urban space and their dimensions in terms of their education, occupation, income, and wealth, deepen the development of segregation and isolation indices, which we did. And we also established a partnership with Equifax, which is a major credit report agency company that has actually been housing and generating private and very accurate descriptions of the socioeconomic conditions of all inhabitants of Chile and the world in general. So what we are doing in this new project is work together with Equifax and to devise a new system of analysis to deliver processed data for scientific analysis of the project. And what we'll be looking to is to integrate models between the construction and using complex networks to look at this and generate user experience or nice, hopefully nice visualization systems to look at this information. Next one. One of the other lines of research that this is a collaboration that we did with Alexander and several of the people I believe are actually in the audience, where we actually looked at entropy as a measure of attractiveness of the social complexity of Rio de Janeiro and metropolitan areas, and we actually correlated different diversity or entropy values with different socioeconomic characteristics, and we're hoping to replicate this with data in Chile as well to generate a comparative benchmark. Next one. And currently, we're actually working with Maxime, and we've been working on this paper for a little while, and actually, what we did here is trying to look at the journeys and the distances from home of the different socioeconomic factors. And what we actually devised is a new metrics of that we call the pulse of the city. So think of it as a long time series, a week time series, hour by hour, where we depict the distance of each individual that we know its socioeconomic stratum or level, and we calculated the distance from home, and we were able, using again a clustering algorithm, we were able to separate 4 types of behavior in how the city is used during the week time. And what is interesting from this map, or from this graph that you see on your left here, is that we're actually able to devise 4 types of social of dwellers, that in which the green ones are the ones that not only that travel the most during the day and go the furthest from their home during the day, but with a pattern that on Friday at around 6 p.m., 1800 hours, the pattern totally reverses. If you see on Friday at around, I'm not able to place the mouse here. Maybe, yes, exactly. You can, Mateus is showing us exactly the point where actually the pattern reverses, and the people that actually work close to their houses actually go off on the weekends to their secondary homes, most likely to the beach or on the countryside. And the people that actually travel longer distance during their journey during the week, they actually stay closer to home during the weekends. So this made us think immediately that there was a very strong correlation with the socioeconomic texture of socioeconomic level of people in the city. And this is exactly what we see and what you can observe through the maps qualitatively, but also in the fraction of surface areas that actually correspond to each socioeconomic level. Next one. So the interesting part here is that we were also able to do was to using to quantify a little more rigorously the structure of this interaction by using the Kronecker delta, which is an indices of hierarchy, and what we also see is that there is a very strong hierarchy on how the city is traveled. So the values actually demonstrate that proximity between shared locations of people with similar socioeconomic structure or level, they will share similar social interaction. So to do that, there is we analyze both voice and movement data and show that they're actually people living in locations of a given socioeconomic tend to move and interact socially with people living in similarly qualified location and with similar socioeconomic status. So this is a very interesting look at how these how actually socioeconomic status influence not only the way you talk to other people, but also the way you use the city. So that it shows that segregation is a very prevalent feature of whole Chile. Next one, please. So the working hypothesis in general is that we have a wealth of demographic and socioeconomic information that's currently housed in private databases by credit report company or geomarketing firms, and they provide actually relevant and up-to-date descriptions of the geography of these urban systems, and that individual traces collected by cell phone records are potentially a significant indicators of how social interactions and spatial interaction occurs, that homophilia is an important component of geographic patterns in urban segregation in Chile and other, hopefully, and we hopefully will be able to look at this in larger Latin American cities, such as Rio Janeiro, and that city size is also a very important aspect in affecting positively to the segregation of patterns in Chile and elsewhere. So these are the working hypotheses that we expect to further develop in this research program and projects. Next. So there's three clear components. One of simple, I'll say very loosely, right? Because it's not necessarily simple, but a mapping exercise of trying to put this socioeconomic information into a firm structure with individual traces and mixing with socioeconomic data. There is a network component in which we look at individual traces collected by cell phones, and we analyze the topology of these networks. And there's also a scaling component, and where we analyze the sizes or how changes of sizes in these different systems can affect not only homophily or segregation in across Chile and elsewhere. So these are the major topics and the major approaches and tools that we use in our lab to trying to understand segregation. Next one. So this is the final, almost final slide, where this is where I have to tell you this is not a project that I developed on my own. Of course, I work with people in the Department of Ingeniería Informática, Universidad de Chile, and Universidad de Santiago de Chile as well, and the Pontificia Universidad Católica, and we are located at the Universidad Austral de Chile in Valdivia. We have hopefully a number of collaboration topics for which I will be very, very happy to discuss with whoever thinks that can contribute to look at with maybe other data or other approximation, other methodologies to provide these. So I'm totally open for collaboration, and I hope that these venues will help to merge interests in these topics. Next one. I think it's the last. So contact me whenever you can, whenever you please, whenever you want to. I'm very available. I unfortunately don't speak Portuguese, but I will learn it. And but we can communicate in other languages as well. So next one. It's my email. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Horacio. If it is when you're here in Brazil, we can clap to you and thank you personally for the session.
So any question, I will be very happy to answer, to discuss, and to clarify and deepen any other issues that might have risen.
I will speak in Portuguese now. Então eu vou estar aberto para perguntas. Quem quiser mandar no chat, não sei se eu vi. Quem quiser mandar no chat em português mesmo, pode mandar que a gente faz a tradução aqui na hora para ele. E quem quiser falar inglês também pode abrir o microfone e falar diretamente com o Horácio. Ou em espanhol também, quem quiser falar em espanhol, Horácio, ou francês também. I believe he speaks French too, right, Horácio? Is that right? Horácio, do you speak French?
Yeah.
Speak French.
I speak French as well. Yes.
Okay.
So French. In general, I almost understand, or I believe I understand Portuguese. So you can shoot in Portuguese as well if you want.
Okay, I will try to speak in English with you. I'm sorry if I'm not great speaker. So thanks for the presentation. I like that a lot. And my search in my master is about demography. So I think it's very interesting, this search that you show us, and I print the title, and I will learn and study a lot of this search. And thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Gabriela. Demography certainly is very, it's a very important topic and very rich area that's being developed. Actually, I didn't have time actually to go over the literature, but there is a lot of work being developed in trying to understand how demographics is related to the technology and information and communication. So yeah, very few people, very few countries are continuing to make censuses, because they're trying to look at new venues to actually gather social information and demographic information of countries and cities.
I'm searching the interaction between rural areas and urban areas. So if I send you an email and you return me with these biographies, if it's possible.
Absolutely. I can absolutely do that. I will be very happy.
Thank you.
I have a question, and I will ask about transportation, which is my subject. Have you one of the graphics, the pictures that you showed that got most of my attention was the one that had the transition pattern for people that in certain segments would travel farther and more. Then after in the weekend, they completely changed their behavior. Yeah, I have a question about, have you researched about the impact of the difference of the transportation system behavior during the weekends and during the weekdays? So to ask, like, in different cities. So I don't know if you have this kind of.
That is a very good question, actually. Unfortunately, we haven't had too much success, although one of our collaborator in our project, which is Dr. Eduardo Graels, has developed an algorithm to identify modes, right? So that's a big topic in itself, trying to identify modes of transportation from CDR data or XDR data. However, the success of those algorithms, the accuracy of them, is not very good. So on one hand, you could approach the question by trying to infer or classify the different trajectories in terms of the mode that's being used. But on the other side, you could do the other way, which is a more correlative approach, which is what I understand you're sort of hinting to it, which is saying, okay, is there actually a different behavior? Is there a different pattern of behavior in terms of the availability of transportation during those times, right? That would be very interesting thing to do, actually. But I suspect that that while there certainly is an impact, it's very hard to discern, what's first, right? The egg or the chicken. So
yeah, when you were speaking, I thought about some kind of interruption in the metro, some strike. Have you got data about one kind of these weird events?
No, see, that could be a different, yes, that could be a some sort of no model, right? Yes, we don't have data for a particular time. I understand that. I think I read once a paper by Alexander Evsukov about the effect of the Carnaval, was it, or the World Cup in Rio on the cell phone pattern. So that type of approximation will certainly hint on that, but still, the pattern is very robust. We have roughly 5 to 6 million people that are being surveyed or look at through the XDRs. So I'm without much proof. My gut feeling is that there isn't so much an impact of the differences in the way of transport, modes of transport.
Thank you. Alguém tem alguma pergunta? Eu poderia ficar aqui e fazer mais algumas perguntas ao Horácio também, mas não quero monopolizar a fala. I was just asking if anybody has a question.
Yeah, I can read that.
Yes, I have. ¿Puedo hacerlo en castellano? Sin problema. Vale. Bueno, imagino que te has cogido los datos de una operadora de
telefónica.
De móvil. Sí, ¿cuántos días de rango ha cogido para hacer los análisis de estos que has señalado ahora para nosotros?
Como les mostraba, I will respond in English so that everybody...
Sí, y yo trabajo en Claro Brasil, ¿vale? Para que sepas, yo trabajo acá en una operadora móvil. O sea,
so what we had available, we were given 4 weeks. 4 weeks in 2015, and we actually chose 4 weeks that were unrelated, so that for privacy reasons, they gave us anonymized information, so we have no indicator. We have a long string of, I believe it's 32,
a hash,
a big hash, a big hash for each user. So we have no idea who is who. But we also picked 4 weeks scattered through the year, so that we could actually have just a very general and non-events for weeks. So each week has 7 days. We have a total of 28 days for the
Perfect.
year. Yeah.
Nice work, Horacio. Incredible the way that you look to the data. It's really incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really, really
Hopefully
incredible.
we could actually recreate, because I mean, the main driver of this, there's many people doing this with that are much more skilled than we are at the university. I'm actually not even a computer scientist. I was trained as a biologist.
Oh,
and
I suppose. Okay.
yeah, and so but the main driver here was, could we actually move from trying to develop a particular product to sell it to somebody to develop a product to actually understand how we behave? So that was the big distinction I made when I went to Telefónica, and I asked them, look, I'm just a researcher. I have no interest to generate any product and make money out of it, but I still believe that there is a lot of knowledge to be able to extract in this process. And that will certainly be a added value to the company. So those, I have had some sort of success with that, because I somehow repeated this with Equifax, and they were very, very understanding, and they're very interested in working with us with their data and trying to develop new algorithms of social stratification, which they already do, but from a more scientific perspective.
Okay, once more, congratulations, Horacio.
Thank you.
And thank you for the presentation. Really, really, really good.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the chat. Ok. Tem mais alguém? Perguntas?
Gostaria de fazer uma pergunta, Matheus.
Boa,
Hi,
Alexandre.
everybody. I'm sorry for my voice. I'm big, how can you say, dor de garganta?
Sore throat.
So Horácio, thank you very much to come here. Very nice presentation, as always. For those that, I think Matheus has told, but we hope that CAPES will approve Horacio's visit, and he will be with us in January next year. So I think we could all be deeper in those subjects. But I would like to explore a little bit of our company with Horacio here. And I would like if you could talk just a little bit more. You just mentioned it in your presentation, but as you know, we are working now in those scale properties of cities, or how how cities grows, and how some properties sometimes have superlinear or linear growth. And my question is, well, first, if you can give a little more hints about that. But my question is, from the work you have done, as you, I don't know if you've got those results yet, but you have joined very rich mobility data that are the XDR, and very rich credit card data that have information about wealth and how people use the money. And my question is that, do you think that we all know that you have those results, that the wealth scales, right, superlinear in the cities, but does poverty scales, how poverty, how different is poverty of small cities and large cities. In that, this is my curiosity. I think if you have working with this, and if you can talk with us a little bit more about those scale properties that are very, very interesting. I know that you work a lot with this.
Yeah. So yes, scaling is a very big topic in physics and in biology as well, and in science in general. And what the hypothesis of scaling shows actually is that when you look at systems of different sizes, of different scales, they behave with respect to their property, their aggregated property of each system. They behave in a very, very predictable way, which means that that when you plot the size of a system, of a city or an organism with a property of it, which is maybe wealth, maybe income, you will see, if you plot that on a log space, so on a log on the x-axis and a log on the y-axis, what you will see is a straight line. And this is a very empirical result. So this is a property of most cities, and there has been no discussion about it since Zips in the 50s up to very recently with the work of Michael Batty and Marc Barthélemy and Luis Betancourt. There is no discussion that scaling, that urban scaling is a feature of cities. The big question is actually what does that mean? How does it come about? So one particular feature that was described in a very early paper in 2007, I believe, by Luis Betancourt and a group in the Santa Fe Institute and the Los Alamos National Lab, what they show is or they propose that they are, depending on the size of the scaling exponent, there is 3 different regimes of scaling. One is a infralinear or sublinear scaling regimes that will correspond to the very similar economies of scales described in the economic literature, where you actually have some sort of optimization process across these cities that make this quantity systematically smaller as the city increases in size. So those properties are properties that pertain or that are related to some sort of optimization factors. Let's say the amount of gas stations in a city, the amount of hospital beds, the amount of the length of the electric cables that are in a city. So in order to put a new cable, or in order to build a new road, you will start building a road where the road already exists, right? So your aim is to optimize the process of road building. And in those terms, scaling becomes sublinear. Now, what happens is that there is another type of properties across cities that are that are more similar to emergent properties. So these are properties that are created in the cities, like money, for example, like wealth, like the number of patents, the number of papers, scientific papers that are created, the number of arts, paintings, of movies, let's say, all these features or characteristics of cities that are built by the people in the cities and that benefit from an interaction among these people for its creation actually behave superlinear, which means that as the city increases in size, you get more of this property, let's say wealth, for example. So when we talk about wealth across the urban areas, it's been largely seen as one of these properties that is that comes out from a social construct. It comes out from the interaction, from knowledge creation, and a panoply of other features that economists actually describe, like information sharing and such. So just because the way we set up the problem or we look at cities, it is very hard actually to say that smaller cities, that wealth in smaller cities will actually be different, will be created different than wealth in larger cities, because scaling actually exists, because scaling is there, because it is an empirical feature of the city. So what is controversial is exactly that actually the hypothesis of scaling, what it shows a very unique and singular generative process for wealth creation, for example, which actually obeys to a scaling, a very specific and superlinear scaling law. So it is useful to understand the city from a macro approach. It is a macroscopic property of the city, but it's very hard to then look at individual places and see actually and try to extract some additional information by comparing larger with smaller, because the hypothesis of scaling states that the generative process should be equal to them. Otherwise, you will see a shift, a change in what physicists called a universality break point. So you will change in different universality scales, right? So there has been different approaches, and in particular, there's been a very interesting research coming out from Brazil. I think it's researcher Ribeiro that has proposed, and it comes also from another paper from Luis Bettencourt in 2011, I believe, where he actually looked at whether there was systematic deviations from scaling, but actually, so far it's been just a very incipient approach, because I don't know exactly where that research stands now, but looking at deviations from scaling or deviations from the scaling law will maybe help to understand if there is any particular characteristic of smaller versus larger sized cities in terms of wealth, for example. But what is interesting is that it is very hard, actually, because these deviations should, by definition of what the fitting exercise of the scaling line should be actually very equally distributed across cities. So you have some smaller cities that are under the scaling law and others that are over the scaling law, but in the average, when you look at the system of cities, you will see that they obey with a maybe 80 to 95% as an R square the fitting law. I mean the scaling law, sorry. but certainly like systematic deviations from scaling will tell you that there is a different operating process going on, describing the creation of such feature, wealth, for example.
Thank you very much. Hope we have the opportunity to discuss more on that.
Yeah,
Soon.
hopefully.
Thank you, Mateus, for organizing.
Thank you. Eu queria fazer uma última indagação, se tem alguém que ainda quer fazer alguma coisa nos últimos pontos, para senão agradecer o professor Horácio pela presença. Dou-lhe uma.
Thank you very much to everybody that stayed till so late, and I very much.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your presentation. Hope to have you here in Rio de Janeiro soon. Hope that your process in CAPES goes well and you arrive soon and safe here in Brazil, and hope to work with you when you're here. Queria agradecer a todo mundo pela presença. Do you like to say anything? Any words?
No, thank you very much to everybody. I really appreciate these venues. They're great.
Queria agradecer a todo mundo pela presença nesse segundo ciclo, nas últimas 2 sessões, hoje. O que eu queria era falar também, professor Horácio, se tudo der certo, vai vir fazer uma visita ao UFRJ. Quem estiver aqui pelo Rio de Janeiro ou quiser se aproximar, ele deixou o contato, também pode fazer o contato via Mob 4.0 e a gente consegue partilhar tudo que está aqui. Produção, tem que dar algum aviso antes de fechar a sessão ou nenhum?
A foto.
We need to take a photo, take a picture today. So I would like, por favor, todos abrirem as câmeras, quem puder, e a gente faz uma câmera aí uma foto bonitinha aí. We're going to take a picture, so I have 1 minute for people to open up the cameras.
Excellent.
And then, okay. So, 1, 2 e 3. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Obrigado a todo mundo pela presença aqui hoje. A gente se vê no próximo ciclo do Mob 4.0 ou em algum outro caminho antes disso. Thank you, Horácio. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Tchau, thank you.
Thank you, professor.
Tchau.
Bye-bye.
Tchau, pessoal.
Tchau, pessoal.
Thank you.
Até mais.
Thank you, Horácio. Obrigada, pessoal.